Hello, it's Brad Laurie, or BlockchainBrad, and today I'm honoured to speak with Denny Weinberger. He is the CEO of Morpheus Network, and if you're not familiar, that's all things supply chain on the blockchain. Denny, thank you very much, mate, for coming on the channel and explaining what's happening of late with Morpheus Network.
Oh, of course, Brad. Always love being on your show. I'm keeping count myself. This is actually the third time we've done this together. So
Awesome.
both been good. So let's make third time even better, a charm, So
I'm sure we can, especially, mate, considering it's 1 a.m. in Australia right now. I'm doing my best. So let's get stuck into all things Morpheus Network with regard to what you've been doing. Now, just as a recap, Denny, I want to just talk about some of the things that you stand by. And one of them explains that you are a full service automated supply chain platform. That's a mouthful. So let's just rehash. Let's recap. Let the viewers know exactly what you stand for.
Okay. Yeah. In general, an automation platform, just to kind of simplify what you were saying, within supply chain, it's a very, sort of complicated field, right? There's multiple flows of things going on and everything has to be in sync, right? There's the flow of money, obviously, the flow of the actual goods and the flow of documents, right? So, within my life, I've been involved in import-export for over 16 years. Noticing all these inefficiencies within supply chain, having to deal with all these compliances, having to make sure that all those flows are in sync. So what our automation platform does, it's actually middleware connecting to all these disjointed parts of supply chain and basically lining them up within automated workflows so that these three flows of documents, goods, and funds actually happen at the right time in sync with each other. So that even if it's unrelated sort of technologies or unrelated occurrences that have to happen for your supply chain to be pushed through, we line those up with an automated workflow. And make sure different triggers are set up within your supply chain to automate the entire process, actually speeding up the entire process, and then actually optimizing each of those individual steps as well.
Got it.
So it's...
So in that sense, let's talk about that in the context of blockchain, because obviously we hear the narrative for those who are not familiar with different layers. And for example, with layer 0, where you see what they call the new internet of blockchain, then you see discussions of layer 1, where you see protocols. For example, we know them as Ethereum. The list goes on, so I don't need to name them. But in your context, you mentioned almost a service. We talk about SaaS and BaaS. So can you talk us through where you fit in the stack, in the whole schema of blockchain, so we can understand exactly what you are?
Exactly. I think you said that perfect with those different layers and offering off a platform or a SaaS style platform as well. This allows us to actually give users, I think that's the number one problem right now in the cryptocurrency and blockchain space is actually leveraging these amazing technologies in the real world, right? So they say all those different layers, and we're that layer on top, that middleware layer connecting users to these amazing technologies, whether it's blockchain or IoT or machine learning. And the way it works is, there's two different styles of business. Some businesses are set up and have these amazing, let's say, ERP systems. They have everybody is in a huge enterprise. Everybody in the entire enterprise is using them enterprise-wide. And then there's these businesses that are doing things a lot more manually. Maybe they're using spreadsheets. There's different ways that they're getting by. We offer a platform for companies that don't have a major ERP system. If a company is using an ERP, they can most definitely use our platform as well. But we're using API connections to actually allow legacy systems to continue to be used, and instead of replacing those systems, enriching those processes and allowing companies to continue doing what they're doing in a more efficient, optimized sort of way as well. So.
Got it. Now, Denny, this is a big deal. We're hearing about companies, I'll name them to help you out. Some of them, for example, like LTO or Unibright. I'll go on with others, but they're all talking about the same thing. They're about bringing the blockchain to the current traditional businesses that exist right now, the legacy systems that exist right now, because obviously that's a huge sector in which you can transform these businesses into the blockchain by integration, by processes of supporting them with new designs, architectures for business. So is that the idea? Is this how you are real deal, Denny? That you are literally looking at what you can do to extend the capacity of existent business now?
You know what? I think we call it like you said, extending what businesses are doing now. But I think that we've made a mistake in the world of of blockchain in the space right now, thinking that handling private keys and our own wallets and setting up that's what everyone's going to want to do. When really when this is going to be mainstream, we talk about when it's going to be adopted. And when that's all back end, when companies are just doing their processes and on the back end, we're leveraging these amazing techs.
Right.
So I think that it's almost like backwards for a lot of companies to, set it up from a token perspective, where our view is purely on the business perspective and how we can get these businesses leveraging blockchain,
Right.
various IoT technologies and machine learning to really optimize.
Got it. And just to clarify, when you say back end, for those who may not be familiar, you're talking about the management of the tokenized economy in the sense that you're trying to make it seamless for businesses now of today, not tomorrow, to utilize your systems and tech, but not have to engage in the tokenized methodologies and actual designs right down to the token itself.
You got it. You got it. We want this, it's about, optimizing businesses. It has to work, right? That's the most important thing, that it works properly. And then, working properly and showing statistics of that is what's really going to drive companies to move towards, a new system altogether.
Right.
But yeah, no, it's, you mentioned the tokenized economies. It's not about, removing, the token by any means, because it's necessary for the platform to function properly. It's about connecting enterprises with token holders and having the whole system work together, sort of thing, driving each other to make sure the system's optimized and running, at full capacity.
Right. And clearly you're speaking with a lot of the real businesses, the real deal sector right now. And we'll talk about what you've been doing and who you've been talking to later. But I want to pull it back to supply chain for a second, Danny, because that's the crux and bedrock of your business. So talk us through what it means to those who aren't familiar. What is a supply chain and why is it relevant?
Mm-hmm. Well, supply chain, first of all, is, it's massive. It's the number one industry in the planet right now. And you're asking, why is it relevant? Why are people looking for, solutions for supply chain? So it is literally the number one inefficiency in the world right now. Number one problem in the world, according to the World Bank, holding back the growth of the GDP. So we're talking about, the numbers they put out is a $2 trillion problem. This is $2 trillion of unrealized money in the pockets of businesses. So we're not optimizing, $2 trillion. This is actually a $15 trillion plus industry. We're trying to optimize to allow $2 trillion to be realized by these businesses. So, when we're saying solving a problem, we're solving the problem. The number one problem in the world is what we're tackling.
Right. Well, I want to interrupt there for a second and clarify this problem in the sense of cost savings, because for me personally, as I read through and understand more of these white papers, they don't always address that common driver from enterprise sector, and that is to be economical, for the transition to be one of value for them. So is that the driving force? And can you prove it that the whole reason for this transition into the decentralized frame is to save these businesses money?
Yeah, most definitely. Right now, there's so many different levels within supply chain that you have to get through in order to just ship something from A to B. And really the craziest thing about it is the supply chain is such a huge industry, but no business starts off saying, okay, let's think of our supply chain, then figure out, everything else. The supply chain is almost the last thing they figure out. They want to figure out what their product is. They want to figure out who their client is going to pay for all these services. And then the supply chain just has to get A to B. So what we're looking to do is optimize that A to B process. And like I mentioned before, those different flows, it's so disjointed what's going on right now. So we're trying to bring it all together, make it through one simple, easy to use platform. We're optimizing the process as well as making it easy to use as well. So.
Got it. Okay. There's a lot involved in that. What I like about what you're saying is that you're driven by the real needs of today. You're engaging clearly with real business and you have a solution for them right now to seamlessly transition into. And that is essentially that platform we're talking about, that one-stop shop to make it possible. Now, Morpheus Network, let's talk about essentially things like inefficiencies, the real things that happen in systems now that you're changing to make them more efficient. Talk us through the hows.
Yeah, most definitely. Let's put aside, the actual automation, because obviously if you're having everything trigger each other, then that's, pushing the supply chain forward and making everything more efficient just from the automation perspective, right? But breaking it down to those individual processes, how are we optimizing? How are we making it a lot easier? For me, like I mentioned, being an importer exporter in the past, compliance documentation was crazy. It doesn't matter what country you're dealing with; it's always different commodity, different harmonized codes. You're dealing with different customs brokers, different freight forwarders down the line. So what we've done in the platform, this is up and active, is we've templated documentation. So basically, all you got to do is say where it has to go. The platform knows who the user is. Everything is basically templated in. So you just generate the documents themselves. No mistakes can be made. Those documents are stored on distributed ledger. and supply to all the parties that you need down your supply chain, whether it's your freight forwarder or your customs broker, and then they handle it from there. So we're taking out that human error in creating these documents. Now, one of our partners actually that we spoke to, we did a survey along with them, over 38,000 businesses. And 90% of these businesses were large enterprises, and 90% of them had ERP systems, yet they were still manually handcrafting documentation.
That's
manually
crazy.
handcrafting. It's crazy. It is crazy. And then those documents and the goods, and obviously the money as well. This is actually a stat from IBM, over 40 points of handling, 40 points of handling down the supply chain.
So inefficient.
It's completely inefficient. And then, think of human error. Think of the lack of visibility, where it's handled, where it's landed, where it's being held.
Right.
Think of the potential for slipping in counterfeit goods as a part of your shipment. Think of things falling off the truck and being sent somewhere else and sold as gray market goods. Down the supply chain, there's so much inefficiency, but also so much, ability for things to go wrong and
right.
other
and also, sorry to interrupt, Danny, but also fraudulent activity, for example. So not only are we talking about economic incentives here for those businesses, but we're talking about legal potential, like improving the legalities of this chain of events that can happen, because the trackability is there, literally. Given the blockchains, the bedrock technology, the ability to really trace A to B seamlessly, cutting out those middlemen costs is also another advantage, I would imagine.
Oh my gosh, yeah, definitely. I think that we take the perspective that there's a worry within those middlemen that having technology bypass all those extra hands down the line is going to sort of take away their jobs. So our view is not necessarily to, let's say, bypass all those freight forwarders and customs brokers and have it work in that way. Instead, having these sort of companies being the ambassadors for what we're doing, knowing that this is they're helping all these other companies in order to push their supply chains forward. So if they're getting people involved, being sort of like that hub of adding people on, suddenly they're not being pushed out by the platform. They're actually helping acceleration, helping the adoption.
Right. And also, sorry to interrupt, but there's been a study done also in Singapore with regard to this point. And what they found was that there's sideways movement in these industries. So they're not losing their jobs, but they're just being reallocated into something that's related to this new movement, this whole shift into decentralized economies.
Yeah. Oh no, for sure. And we'll talk about this a little bit more, I guess, when we talk about some of our partners as well. But it just makes sense for us to, let's say, not tackle every single corporation saying, "Oh, do you have a supply chain? Let's do this," as opposed to going, let's say, a customs broker who has 1,000 companies that have supply chains that all go through him, and suddenly we're setting it up for 1,000 companies instead of setting up just for the one of that broker, trying to cut him out of the circle. So
right. Well, Danny, it sounds like you are very busy, clearly, with discussions in all different sectors, because obviously there's a lot of interest. So far, we'll get into this later, but how's the sentiment been? How's the feedback been from the traditional sector, just generally? Give us a real sense of what it's like from your position.
It's from my position, it's been fantastic. Honestly, I know there's a lot of misconception as to what's going on in the space, and I think that people look at the market in general and think that because, let's say, the market isn't at its highest point, that interest on a global level it must be down as well, which is completely untrue. I think right now we're actually at the peak of knowledge when it comes to people knowing what the advantages are of blockchain in general and other emerging technologies as well. So when we talk to companies right now, it's really about them wanting to know, what makes it more efficient. And when we show them, it's excitement. So, and the ease of our platform, the ease of, using it. And once we, let's say deploy a contract or whatever, they're saying, that's it, I'm like, yeah, that's it. That contract's deployed. You're leveraging all those technologies. You see the eyes light up saying like, wow, we can actually do this. It's easier than what they're doing now, using better, more efficient technology.
Got it. And it sounds like you've got a few partnerships in the pipeline, and we'll talk about those later. But it is good to know that as you travel the globe, as you try and really explicate what you're all about, that people are not only listening, but they're getting their checkbooks out and they're getting their pens to sign deals. Now, let's explore a little bit more about the features, really specifically, if we can, in a timely fashion, so we get through all of this. Now, automation, integrations, multi-flow payments, layering tech, these are features listed on your website and in your paper. So let's go through them just basically one by one. Automation, we've covered a little bit more. Let's extend it. Let's go into it, and then we'll break these down.
Yeah, automation, it basically triggers down the supply chain, setting off the next process which has to happen. And these triggers have to happen in order, right? So there's things built into the supply chain which could be used as a trigger. Let's say, for example, if we send off a shipment, with FedEx or with UPS, we have it built into the platform that tracking number will actually be used as a trigger when it's, when that package is delivered and that tracking number gets updated. That update of delivery is a trigger to set off the next objective, within your workflow. So, whether that's a final payment or anything else that you want to, handle within your supply chain, set up another shipment or, send off a PO, whatever it is. So that really helps the automation, leveraging not only, emerging text, but, the legacy text that people are still using. So that's, one part of the automation as well. Now, obviously with the automation, within the, we have to actually make these triggers as well happen. So we have, for example, a QR code generator. I can supply, let's say, QR codes to a warehouse floor. When they're finished with packaging and they want to ship something off, that's the rest of your workflow, is that whole shipping, the compliance documentation, setting up the truck, all those different handling points. But that QR code, that warehouse, simple, someone wrapping it with plastic, basically can scan that QR when they're done, and it'll set off this amazing, workflow. And that initial trigger of that QR scan is what sent it all off. So
got it. And have you built all of those technologies into your platform now and into your interface?
Yeah, obviously there's, daily we're developing, new and more exciting technologies to integrate. But yeah, the QR code system is completely active. To be able to set it, the QR code system, I'll talk about that a little bit more because we're talking about it. To me, it's amazing. Like, it blows my mind what this system does. So I'm sure anyone who's listening to this has scanned a QR before. You just pull out your cell phone, and yeah, exactly. And what I find amazing about it is that you don't need to install any software. You don't need to have any special hardware, just your phone itself. And what we're doing with these scans is each QR code scan actually takes the latitude and longitude of the scanner himself. And now if you have admin capabilities, if you give you credentials, when you're hitting that QR code scan, you actually add more information as well. Now those latitude and longitudes, as well as the extra information which could be added, when I say extra information, I mean, let's say a company wants to add a sales document, or something was returned. They want to make sure that return is taken in, or let's say something was shipped and was damaged. You want to include pictures of that damage. All that can be included with a simple QR code scan and then adding in that information. And we have the latitude and longitude of the person adding on that information as well. So we're actually tracking, geolocation tracking of every single product right from the manufacturing facility where it's scanned, all the way down, all the handling points. We mentioned those 40 points of handling. If we have scans all the way down, we know exactly where those points of handling are. So,
so clearly, all in one little scan, you've got all that traceability, all that trackability, and all of that data that can be uploaded. That's pretty cool, because obviously there are things now afforded by this tech that couldn't simply have been done before. And when you said a lot of this manual handling is happening, it's quite stark, the contrast between what's being done and then what can be done with this tech.
Oh yeah, definitely. I talk to people about it as I give presentations, and people are like, oh, I can't imagine, having something so simple and easy as they see it happen. And, I'm not only, obviously the CEO of Morpheus Network, but I'm a use case. I'm a study myself, because I went from manually handcrafting with a pen and pencil, to fully automate this entire process and get these documents done, in one step and a click. So it's really is amazing.
You raise a really good point there. You've done the hard yards, so to speak. You've actually done that really difficult process, manual handling. So you're motivated right from the outset with your 15 plus years of experience to change the game in this particular industry. And I think that's important we raise that. Now let's move across to some of the other points. We talk about multi-flow payments. I think you already alluded to integration. That's why I just skipped it. Now, multi-flow payments is really important to understand in your whole architecture. What are they and how does it all work?
Yeah, multi-flow, it's, as people would define this, I'm going to ask what's it's different flows of payments, basically, right? So When it comes to global trade, there's different channels they have to get, funds to. Obviously, being a blockchain-based platform as well, and dealing with, cryptocurrency in general, we give that option for payment for the user using, crypto to crypto payment sort of thing. Now, when it comes to enterprises, if we said, oh yeah, our payment system is crypto to crypto, spend all the Bitcoins and stuff you want, it's not necessarily something that enterprises would want. So we have a partnership with Access Pay, integrated with the Swift network as well. So allowing companies to send a regular, bank transfer payment over the Swift network. That's another one of our flows, increasing.
Okay, I want to stop you there because Denny, that's huge. Let's be real there. And I'm sure your advisors would back me if they were sitting there next to you, because the fact that traditional businesses can use fiat can't be understated in the potential of what you're trying to do globally.
Yeah, they could use fiat as a part of an automated workflow, and all that is hashed on the chain as well. So even if it's a fiat transfer, you can go back to the confirmations and all that of that fiat transfer. Right. And we're showing the user not only where the money is going, because there's a lot of there's a lack of transparency when it comes to fiat transfers right now.
Right.
So we're not only showing the user the actual file that's pulling out the money out of their account. And the MT900, which shows that the funds were sent off properly, but being involved with Access Pay and Swift GPI, we're actually getting pings back to the platform as well, letting them know that money's been received on the other side, which is funny that fiat is sort of following what crypto has been doing for this whole time. We can actually trace those shipments, those payments actually have been received.
It's really interesting because you're almost alluding to the prospect of making fiat transparent via the blockchain.
It's in the name of getting enterprises sort of being able to hop on right away. It's the same as these being involved with legacy systems and integrating with, let's say, SAP or Oracle and so on and so forth. Let these enterprises hop on right away, use the systems they're currently using as they transition to these more advanced emerging techs as well.
Got it. Now that's exciting because also it would suggest that in time they'll be more likely to adopt these new technologies coupled with tokenized economies much more with less reticence and more endeavor, more excitement about what it can actually do. But right now you're giving them an opportunity to ease in. Now,
exactly. And in time, just to kind of get people to think about it, we will be announcing more about our multi-flow payment system as well. So look for more updates and more flows, make it even more multi-flow. So
awesome. Looking
forward to people to think about.
Great stuff. Now, layering tech, how does that work? Because we talked about layers before as a more general analogy, but this is a little different. This is internal layering.
Correct. Yeah. Within a supply chain, once again, there, so many, we talked about bringing in these sort of like disjointed technologies and pieces of supply chain. So our layering tech is layering in the proper, let's say, if we're talking about blockchain techs in particular, for example, document storage, as I mentioned, storage and sharing. When our documents are templated and created, they have to be shared across the supply chain with all different parties. So being an ERC20 token and an Ethereum base, storing on Ethereum obviously is, that's not advantageous at all. We're leveraging other blockchain technology, IPFS, to actually store an IPFS and share it across the supply chain. So we're layering an IPFS within our workflows. Right. When it comes to payments as well, using for example Stellar as a payment option as well,
which
layering
is super fast comparatively to others.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head right there. So we're actually leveraging the proper technologies using our layering technology, using the proper technologies as they're needed for these enterprises and businesses using the platform. But once again, it's not the type of thing where the user is saying, okay, now I want to do this, so I'm going to choose this blockchain for this capability. No, they just say, I have to, I need document storage. I have to share this with my users and, people down in that supply chain. And that's the tech that's used on the back end.
Got it. Now it's interesting because obviously these enterprises that are engaging with you, many of them wouldn't actually care so much about blockchain. Let's be real about that because they have a business to do. What they do care about is efficiency. So do you find that as you're engaging with these businesses, that whilst they're excited about technology and blockchain, they actually care more about the fundamentals of productivity, efficiency, and you can give it so they want to do business with you and you handle the blockchain?
Yeah, I don't know if you noticed this, Brad, or not, but I like to talk a lot. And when I talk to these businesses, I do my best to do as much listening as I possibly can do, because I can just go on and on about, the platform is awesome. It does this, and we're geolocating that, and look at this, and look at it. It's like, but those sort of, things that are amazing to me and exciting to me aren't necessarily solving the problems that these businesses have.
Right,
So,
exactly. And I think that's the point. They want to hear how you solve their problem.
exactly. So, we talk about their business, we talk about, what's going well. And that's the thing about being a business owner that, a lot of people don't hear that inside information, that as much as you know what's good about your business and you say, oh yeah, we make this, the profit margins are here and this and that.
Right.
Business owners know what's going wrong even more so. They'll say like, that guy Jim that I have work for me is terrible, or this takes forever, this is expensive. Like, they won't tell you that necessarily. They don't want you to know that you're complaining about everything on a day-to-day level, but that's what a business owner does. All day long, they're just battling the stuff that pisses them off. And
exactly.
I can say that, I apologize.
No, that's fine. Go ahead. That kind of language is fine. Now, let's talk about, though, in the context of these enterprises, since you broached them. Now, they obviously are finding that you provide them with this key solution. But let's talk about some of the updates in the context of what you've been doing. You've been traveling around. What are some of the fundamental things that you could consider an update in enterprise frame, or an enterprise sector, with regard to Morpheus Network since we last spoke? Because you've been doing a lot that we wouldn't know about.
Yeah, it's for people that don't know, at the end of March, that was end of Q1, we launched our platform actually, so people can actually go hop on, sign up, and be able to leverage these technologies and automate workflows and so on and so forth.
Okay, that's a big deal. So finally, you're fully operational. Yeah,
exactly. We're on the mainnet. We're operational. That's obviously very exciting. Now, myself being in North America, we don't like to restrict ourselves to geographic region, but with just my past knowledge when it comes to shipping cross border in Canada, US, and Mexico, we've actually signed partnerships in each one of the USMCA region countries, formerly the NAFTA region countries, North America.
Okay. And so how many countries is that?
It's Canada, US, and Mexico, right? Okay. So we're basically all of North America, and we have basically partners that are specialists within the customs fields and in transportation and stuff, and having experts within customs, and then being able to sort of increase their capabilities, what we're offering, and it's awesome. It's fantastic, and it helps our developers as well, because I have a supply chain background, but our developers do not have a supply chain background, right? So we have to sort of meet the technology to the use cases, and having these partners who do have supply chain backgrounds, helps me along as well, getting the developers on the right path, and it's going really, really well.
Great. So now we're talking about, as you mentioned before, that alliance of the tripartite almost of these three countries. But what does it mean inside that? Let's go deeper. We're talking about enterprise, real business. Give us some names. Let us know what really that means for Morpheus Network in terms of real context we can understand, so that if we were to hear of some brands, for example.
Oh, definitely. As I mentioned, our view is to go after multipliers, right? As opposed, obviously we're not going to shut down taking on a company that's massive and wants to do business, right? So, for example, we've signed a partnership, a contract. One of our clients, going to be a paying client, obviously, is Geoffroy Group out of Mexico. They actually are a customs broker out of Mexico and out of the United States as well. Now, household names, people possibly, but maybe people do know of Geoffroy Group, and they should, because they've been around for over 100 years. They've been handling customs in the US and Mexico. They have some amazing clients. So they're handling the customs in Mexico for PepsiCo, for Carl's Jr., for 3M. Like this is a major, serious customs broker, and being partnered with them and being able to handle the customs for their clients is something that we're very excited about. And we have our initial sort of project with them as well. To be focused and guided with them is actually an avocado export out of Mexico. It turns out I love avocados. Like I wouldn't have, obviously. I wouldn't shut down the project if it was black licorice. If it was black licorice, which I don't like, I still would have done the project, obviously, but it just makes it that much sweeter to have it as, as avocado. But it's a fantastic project, and just working on obviously the documentation and then fitting it all together with their supply chains and all that. So it's going really, really well. And Geoffroy is just amazing to work with.
So what are the magnitudes of these kind of business? I'm an Aussie, so I don't know all these companies, but give us a sense of, what kind of business these are. What's their turnover,
Like Geoffroy itself, they do about $40 million a year. That's purely logistical work, right? So they have, brokerage and shipping and so on and so forth that they're handling for these companies. Companies like PepsiCo, they're massive. They're shipping things all over the place, obviously all over Mexico, into the States as well. And then, these companies that, within Mexico, which is amazing that I was there actually in March. It's going back about just over 2 weeks now. I spoke at the Logistics Summit. It's the largest logistics show across all of Mexico, and meeting all these companies one by one, discussing not only the Geoffroy Group and their connection with Geoffroy Group, but them seeing the shift in technology coming into Mexico, and what a huge change they're seeing in the efficiencies and how companies are actually spending more money in order to transition, in order to save money in the long run. So it's Geoffroy is an amazing, partner, but also opens the doors to all these other companies saying, oh yeah, of course, Geoffroy Group, let's take a look at what they're doing. And, anybody that's smaller than Geoffroy is saying, wow, what are these guys doing and what are we missing out on? And it's actually increasing the adoption as well, having these partners.
Right. Now, Danny, it sounds like that you've got a lot more that you're not telling me as well with names like that. So it's going to be great to hear about these as these NDAs are released and you can tell us more. But I want to talk to you about the first market mover advantage, because you've been around in this space leading this project for quite some time now. You've gone through all the trials and tribulations of this very tough market. So what's the advantage for you? Are you indeed leading the way in these regions you mentioned? Or are you aware of any other like designs, like architectures, like SaaS models that are actually challenging you?
That's a great question, Brad. And the way our whole view as being middleware is growing in parallel with these companies. Like we're dealing with emerging technologies. In order for technology to be emerging, it's new. Everything is new in this space. And our company as well. I have not run into another supply chain middleware that is focused on supply chain specifically and the inefficiencies like we are. To be honest with you,
that's good. That's a good thing, right?
It is. Once again, there's if you take the biggest shipping companies in the world, UPS, FedEx, DHL, people aren't saying, oh, one day DHL is going to, run FedEx and UPS out of town. Supply chain is absolutely massive. Like we mentioned, we're talking trillions, a multi-trillion-dollar industry. So for us to say that we want to be the only show in town, it's not, not necessarily even plausible to be the only show in town.
What you're trying to do, arguably, there may be front runners like yourselves globally. So do you feel that you can be one of these representatives in this middleware offering that can lead the way and really take a market share in this?
I really feel we do. I feel like you mentioned that, that we're one of the first companies in the world, obviously, to do something like this. We have the proper team to do it. We have the proper networks to do it as well. Our technology is just, is functioning so smoothly and amazingly that I just don't see how, we're not going to keep on progressing. And every single day we're growing, So I do feel we're going to be a major player in this space. And it just has to do with the fact that, not only am I motivated, but the whole team is motivated. And as we keep on growing, you can't stop, companies from seeing the advantages of what we're putting out there. So,
right. So obviously you're growing. I mean, let's talk about that now. We'll throw in the discussion of team. Your team needs to grow to prove this. Is it? And day in, day out, are you proving that you have economic growth, or are you proving that you have some sort of ecosystem growth?
Oh yeah, most definitely. And, there's obviously the core team itself, which is, as motivated as ever when it comes to myself and Noam and Carl, who's the, the head of business development as well. And the developers and, that team's growing as well. But my favorite growth that I'm seeing within the team are the ambassadors. The people, the community. And, honestly, it's when you get into this project, when I got into this project and I started, working with these technologies and seeing the advantages and, I never in my mind realized these personal connections that I would make with community members who also share these, similar visions that I have within this project. And, that's what I'm seeing now. I'm seeing community members reaching out to companies, reaching out to, customs brokers and freight forwarders. And suddenly that, Morpheus Network is, on the tip of these people's tongues. And that's thanks just to community members, feeling the same, sort of excitement in the project that we feel as well. So
right. And Danny, I want to add something in there, because it's one thing to have community members and ambassadors who maintain their crypto hype. But you said something that's quite rare, and that is that your community members, many of them are going and engaging with enterprise sectors, with the private stakeholders, with people in customs. All of this is a big deal because they're literally supporting you as a viable entity, as a viable new solution that utilizes new technologies. That is quite amazing, because for much of the time I spend in crypto, we see discussions in a crypto. So tell us some examples of this. Like, I'd like to know more about real scenarios where these community members have broken the barriers of crypto and reached out into traditional sectors.
Do you know what? I'll give you a specific situation, and I think I won't name the community member, but the community member will know who I'm talking about. They're probably pretty excited that I'm mentioning this. So
awesome.
There was an AMA that I did back in the end of 2018, and one of the questions, was about us reaching out into Africa and running supply chain in Africa. And since then, we actually have a couple projects in Africa as well. We're in discussions and, sort of working on some things. But a community member that asked, it was anonymous, whoever asked that question, I didn't know who it was at the time. That community member said, I said that I would like to, we're not working on anything at the moment when that AMA was going on. So that community member took it upon themselves to start reaching out to freight forwarders, customs brokers in Africa, finding, someone who realizes that new technology is the way to go. And that's what's going to change in the world. So, and they actually found a contact. They emailed out about myself. They talked about the project, sent off a thread, and we're going down the road of actually starting out a pilot project in Africa. And that literally was born by, this community member reaching out. It had nothing to do with any of our team members, none of our core team members, nothing at all. This was a community member reaching out, explaining what we're doing, and then explain to this person what the advantages are. And next thing I know, we're in discussions about running a project together. So
that's pretty cool, because you have a dream team when it comes to community. If your community members are doing this for free, Denny, I think that is just so rare, and that really bespeaks of the whole utility core that you have, which we need to talk about a bit more in the token design. So let's go back a bit now to security. That was cool that you explained that, but you need to have a secure network overall. So hacking is a big part of your framework. Let's discuss that in this context.
Yeah, Hacken is running a bug bounty for us. So basically they're making sure that the platform is running as smooth as possible. Hacken's amazing. We've actually dealt with them for a while now, as we're sort of developing, having them keep track of what we're doing as well. And it's basically, like you said, keeping the network secure, and keeping the users, people hopping on, knowing that Hacken is making sure that they're secure, gives them that sense of security as well. So a sense of security within the actual security of the network. So Hacken's fantastic, and in our team as well. Our developers and all that. We're taking the perspective of doing things properly from the beginning, and not running into issues that are going to cause security issues in the future.
Okay, now with regard to also, you mentioned developers, what's the degree of transparency with your code? Because obviously you mentioned before, you come from the background specifically of the vertical of this industry, but your developers, some people don't know so much about some of these members. So how can we know more? How can there be full transparency right from GitHub and beyond, so we can trust that you have the right dev team?
1,000%. That's a great question, Brad. And as middleware, connecting all these different technologies for these businesses and trying to run a business ourselves, there is a centralized sort of approach to it at first to get this running properly, and before we can fully decentralize it for everyone else. So you mentioned the openness of the code and all that. We want to make sure that everything's working and running perfectly. What I'm trying to show people as well within if you look in our Medium and our YouTube videos and all that, is actually introduce people to the developers themselves. Show everyone that these are real people. It's not just some code written by someone behind the scenes.
So it's not blockchain bullshit, essentially.
Oh, 1,000% no. No bullshit whatsoever. Pardon my French there.
That's fine. We need to get real about this. It's 2019. So we want to know that you're the real deal.
Oh, most definitely. So I'll bring in these developers to talk about not only, what they think about the project and they think about me and what's going on, but what are they working on specifically? So they'll talk about their actual specific project within Morpheus Network, and then we'll show people. We'll go into it. We'll actually go through the demos. We'll let the developer themselves run through exactly what they're going through. So it's as transparent as possible with the actual output that we're putting out there, and the results in the platform as well.
Right. So you're quite confident that you have the code built in. What about sort of code reviews? Has there been anything done in that respect? And also, would you consider it in the future so people can really come to understand the quality of the code? And also talk about, I guess, the reasons why you have this proprietary approach, because obviously there's the risk of appropriation.
Great question. Yeah, when it comes to the code, obviously when we're dealing with hacking and our developers as well, we're putting it through extra eyes and extra passes to make sure everything's running smoothly. Now, once again, when running a business, trying to put this together, to open up the code at this point, it doesn't make sense for us. That's what our view is, to actually build a business based on sustainable revenue. So just to open up the code for the sake of opening up the code is not really what we're doing right now. Let us develop, let us get this revenue in the door, and then basically opening it up to companies to not only, let's say, review code and see what we're doing, but having these actual modules which are specific towards, for companies to actually develop something for themselves. So,
right. Got it.
And then,
so you're protecting the tech right now so that you can be viable.
Exactly. And then adding on to the tech and making it open source from that perspective is going to be even easier once it's built in for everyone.
Got it. Okay, Danny, now a tough question. Roll up the sleeves. We're going to talk about money. Are you making it? You mentioned revenue. Obviously, revenue is not necessarily correlated with the token per se, and we'll talk about how that token economic model works. But are you making money?
Yes, like we mentioned, we just launched last week. We're doing these specific pilots and all that. So we're just starting to build right now. And I believe that the term we use is, I think that we used to use beer money, but that beer sounds like almost like a luxury because
sounds like university.
Yeah, but you need food and stuff. So, we call it, ramen profitability, or, getting those funds in right now, but not in the sense that, it's exploding through the door. And that has to go with making sure that everything's running smoothly before we actually blow it through the door with Joffroy and all these different partners.
Got it. So you're confident revenues lined up, ready to go in time?
Most definitely. That's,
okay.
That's why we're doing this in the first place, obviously.
Got it, Danny. So, and to clarify as well, you are a centralized business. Let's be real about that. It doesn't, just because you're using decentralized technologies to build your system doesn't mean that you're not a full-blown, real deal business, much like we see other traditional business designs. Is that fair to say?
That is correct. That is correct. Yeah. We do have a company, we do have a corporation, and that's, a registered corporation. That's a part of the centralized system of the world. Right. So, and yes, we're using decentralized techs and giving the ability for business to use decentralized techs within their businesses. But yes, in general, we are a centralized corporation.
Got it. Okay. Now let's talk about the role that your advisors have, because you have some really outstanding advisors, not again to FOMO. One of them is Roger Crook, the ex-CEO of DHL. And we mentioned that before. So you're not trying to be DHL, but you're trying to use the skill sets that Roger has to really build out this supply chain potential.
Yeah, Roger obviously gives amazing advice. He is actually a full team member. He's, can be a full team member that we talk to all the time, basically. So it's basically just a nomenclature thing, advisor versus team member. Okay. But really his knowledge and experience within supply chain is unmatched. I'm a basketball fan myself, so I relate it to, my growing up Michael Jordan. I don't know if that's a relation that you use in Australia, but the Michael Jordan of basketball, Roger Crook is the Michael Jordan of supply chain. So having him as a team member, we actually I did a demonstration for him of of our QR codes. Having him scan geolocation in Singapore, from Canada to Singapore. And he was just blown away. He's blown away just by scanning and seeing these technologies right in front of him and the applicational use of them and how we're using them is
right. Well, that's amazing. That's awesome that he loves it so much. But let's bring it down to what he actually does for Morpheus Network. So talk us through the kinds of things he does as a core member / advisor that really do his job, extend the ecosystem.
When it comes to experience within supply chain, people ask what happens with a regular shipment, and that's boring. It's what Roger is known for is, any sort of extra, when I say extra, I mean problems in supply chain, right? Nothing goes smoothly all the time. And if everything went smoothly all the time, then things would be a lot more optimized, right? So we talk about the creative aspects of supply chain. When things do go wrong, what do you do when ISF hasn't been filed properly? What do you do if something can't be loaded up properly? What do we do in these situations? So, when it comes to the platform, when things don't go right, that's when the platform has to react in a certain way as well. So me and Roger, we kind of discuss, going through these flows, going through these workflows and how they should be working properly. And when let's say this situation happens in a certain scenario, me and Roger will come together and say, okay, what's the best way to handle this? And Roger, he's a genius at that because he's dealt with everything, right? So,
and what I'd like to hear, Denny, and sorry to interrupt, is that he's not a token advisor, no pun intended. But quite simply, there's so many of them in these crypto startups that we see, many of them bullshit as well. But in this case, not a token advisor, but actually doing real stuff and doing it daily or weekly. It's good to hear that. We need to hear that to really just to have trust in these kind of startups that are actually moving beyond the narrative of crypto and into the real world. The other advisor slash core member potentially I wanted to talk to you about was Simon Cocking as well, because he is another key asset, arguably. But why? What does he do? And how does he continue to do this to support you?
Yeah, Simon is amazing. He's been a part of a lot of projects, and I think people might misconceive that as, like you mentioned, a token advisor is just going after tokens and so on and so forth. But that is Simon's knowledge within the tech industry. He's the head of the Irish Tech News. Having us connected with all of his different partners in regions that he's working in. He spoke in front of the South Korean government a few months ago as well. And, he sees the advantage of our platform within supply chain and how we're using things in the real world. And, Simon gives me amazing advice when it comes to within the cryptocurrency space, within the blockchain space, within the tech space that he's been around for so much longer than I have. And, having him and his knowledge and his knowledge base is just amazing for us. So,
right. But does his connections and his network translate into real connections that you'll actually use?
Most definitely. Not only from let's say from a revenue generating business standpoint, but also from these technological sort of integrations and meeting all these different companies, and also from a marketing perspective. Like as much as people, myself as a business guy, I don't necessarily want to concentrate on marketing all the time. I just want to push towards revenue and getting transactions flowing through the system and so on and so forth. But it's a huge part of it. And having, Simon, Irish Tech News backing us and all that as well. It's fantastic and it helps the project in general. And really appreciate Simon and everything he's done for us. And honestly, as it comes to, different advisors that we've had, he's unbelievably responsive as well. And he actually helps us. He helps me specifically think of things that we're not doing that are obvious. It's like, Simon, why aren't we doing that? You're right. We should definitely be doing this. So, we'll be seeing some interesting projects that, are almost like Simon brainchilds that we're putting together. So
got it. So, some of the smartest people in business often say, Denny, that they want to be the dumbest person at the boardroom. And clearly that's kind of the tact you're taking, not to imply that.
No, but I say that all the time.
Obviously you want really skilled people is what I'm alluding to. My apologies if that's a bad analogy, but obviously you are very good at doing your job. I probably should stop there digging a hole. Now,
no, Brad, I agree with you, 100% actually. When it comes to everyone I deal with, everyone I hire around us and all that, it's, I try to be the dumbest person in the room, honestly. Like I want, even when it comes to, if I understand fully what's going on, I try to take the perspective of someone who might not understand it. And I want the developers, I want our marketing people, I want everyone to take the perspective that businesses who aren't on the inside, they're not internal with us, they don't know what we're doing. They have to understand this as well. So things have to be understandable. And for a business, their supply chains make sense. We want this to make sense as well and why it's an advantage for what they're doing.
Sure, I appreciate that, mate. Now, let's talk about probably one of the most important parts of your updates, and that is your pilot programs. Now, they are sequenced over a long period of time, several months, in fact. So can you bring us up to speed with where you're at in the context of the following? So we have fraud protection, cold chain custody, compliance, oil and gas as major areas that you're going to focus in and on. Let's talk about what you've done so far with the pilot programs and where you're at.
All right, fantastic. The first one you mentioned was fraud prevention, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. Fraud prevention. That's an awesome pilot. We're actually dealing with SAP, one of our partners, directly on that. And basically that's, the world of supply chain, as I mentioned, there's a lack of transparency as to what's going on, lack of visibility. So what we're tackling specifically is, counterfeit items, black market, which involves counterfeit and as well as stolen goods, as well as gray market items. So just to break that down a little bit for you, when it comes to black market, people know, fake goods, stuff that's, that's not real and then sold somewhere else, as well as stolen goods. So goods that are, stolen from somewhere and then sold somewhere else. Gray market is actually can be within the same company, but being sold at the place where it, sort of in a sense fell off the truck. It's not stolen. It's being sold from a different facility that's supposed to be sold from. So what our fraud prevention system does, actually using our QR code scans, actually tracks all these different items, where the handling points are, where the intended handling points are. If anything is scanned not within that path that it's supposed to be on, right away it flags the system, and that's part of our fraud prevention protocol, letting the admins, the company itself, the manufacturing facility or the distributors know that something's wrong with this specific product.
Now that's a really important application that could use globally. So I want to talk about what the pilots can mean, Danny, as well, because if this is successful, you're suggesting it has been, can this be something that then is just adopted globally and gets the attention of these countries and of these private sector users?
Yeah. Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. That's why, we're excited to be developing this along with SAP, the world's #1 ERP system, them being able to offer our fraud prevention protocol, to all their clients, that's obviously a dream for us. Right. So we have the perfect partners to be working on that alongside, SAP. And, once we have the protocol up and running perfectly, it's, very close. It is something that we can, institute for a variety of companies, whether you want to keep track of your, whether it's luxury goods, whether it's pharmaceuticals, whatever it is, to make sure that things are legitimate. So.
Right. Okay. Now let's move through these a little bit faster because of time, but cold chain custody, where are you at with that?
Oh, cold chain, when it comes to these different pilots and projects, I love the overlap and be able to use the different techs, So cold chain, we're using amazing IoT techs when it comes to, temperature sensors, feeding back to the platform. And for us, it's all about building up these really rich, amazing digital footprints. So when I mentioned, let's say like a QR code scan and geolocation and temperature pings from IoT and all that, these are all recorded, right? So we actually have something called the digital footprint. You bring up the digital footprint for every one of your workflows, and you can see the entire history of everything that's happened for that shipment. Right. So for cold chain, we're recording all these amazing, temperature recordings, and we actually use those temperature readings as a trigger. So if the temperature raises to a level that's too high, you're actually going to trigger a whole bunch of other things that have to happen based on, let's say, it's cold chain for food or cold chain for pharmaceuticals. If the food's spoiled, you have to have something else happen within the workflow, right? So we actually have a trigger for temperature rising too high, which will set off something, let's say like insurance documents, or resend the shipment, or cancel the payment, or whatever has to happen for that specific process. So
right, so red flags for important reasons. But give us an example of that in the context of pilot. So clearly there are pilot programs now built in, or are they coming?
Right now we have our actual partners that we're developing these pilot programs with. So the specifics on them is we're looking at a beef exportation. So basically you got to keep track of the temperature of the beef the whole way. And really the biggest part of that that whole pilot is the compliance documentation. It's actually quite complicated to ship food product. This shipment is actually coming from South America, from Argentina specifically, being shipped into the US. So we're working on the compliance documentation part of it. The actual IoT and temperature reading of that is ready, and it's solid and works perfectly. We're doing similar cold chain compliance for pharmaceuticals as well, coming out of Mexico. And then also, we're saying cold chain compliance, but if you swap out a temperature sensor and use a geolocation sensor, then it's a different compliance as well, with keeping track of location the whole time. So it's a lot about this overlapping sort of pilots and technologies that if you're developing for one company, you can slightly tweak it and use the same sort of functionality for another complete process.
Right, a lot's going on. You've done so much since we last spoke. Now, compliance, I think that's a really big deal, especially considering you're working cross-country, you're international already. What is how's that going with regard to pilot?
Oh, it's going wonderfully, and I think that's our focus, was to sign brokers, customs brokers, which these are their lives, right? Like they do customs documentation. If the documentation is wrong, the shipment's not going to happen. They don't get paid. That's their whole business, right? So working with these customs brokers specifically, we just had an awesome video with customs broker, Customs Direct, out of Sioux Falls. That's in South Dakota in the States, and they're helping us, making sure that the e-manifest, which sets up the shipment to get across the border with U.S. Customs Border Protection, is set up perfectly. The actual pro forma invoice, the EPA docs, Environmental Protection Agency docs, so much compliance that goes on. And Customs Direct, Jim Maslowski, who's the owner of that company, that they're helping us with every single one of these docs. And it's amazing having these partners that have done this for over 20 years, and now we're putting that knowledge into a platform that's going to optimize those methods. Right.
Okay. Now let's put two together: oil and gas, both natural resources. What's the relationship between that and Morpheus Networks in the context of pilots possibly coming?
Yeah, we have a project right now that we're working with another one of our partners, Blockchain Guru. Basically, with that project with oil and gas, it's super interesting. There's these refineries, obviously, that ship off via rail, and all the rail cars have to get to a super tanker on the other end. Super tanker is this massive, massive boat that gets filled up, and it leaves at a certain time, regardless if it's full or not, right? So basically, what we're doing with this, for the oil and gas industry is making sure to optimize when those rail cars are loaded, when they're offloaded, to make sure that the super tankers are filled up as much as possible. Right now, there's a lot of disconnect within that whole system with the refineries versus the actual rail lines. When stuff is loaded, there's no transparency. There's different records being kept by both companies, and at the end, we're having half-filled super tankers costing literally millions and millions of dollars.
Right, and that sector, Denny, has billions of dollars as well. So even more exciting for you because you're working with the big bucks in this kind of industry.
Yeah, if you look at the history of Blockchain Guru, our partners here, they're actually a Canadian company. They've dealt with a ton of these oil and gas companies in the past. They actually have a cross-country tour going on right now, speaking to these executives from the oil and gas companies, telling them the advantages of Morpheus Network specifically, and what we're doing. So
wow, that's pretty interesting because, again, harping back to the magnitude of this sector, we're talking about probably billion-dollar companies that they're talking to.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely. And what's amazing about it is multi-billion-dollar companies, but talking to Blockchain Guru, who's done a bunch of installs for these companies. They have ERP systems that cost them $1 billion to install, and they're not running properly.
Right.
So they have $1 billion in the hole in installing software, and they're still looking for ways to make it run properly. So we feel like we definitely can help them with that, and we're showing them how we're doing that.
Got it. Okay. Now, global launch Q1 2019, it's happened, and now you're literally operational. That's really exciting. So I want to talk to you about what that means in terms of plug and play and proof of adoption. These are two things I want to really hit on the head. Let's start with the plug and play. I know you're excited to talk about that.
Oh, the plug and play ecosystem, just amazing. The plug and play tech center out of California. This is something that we applied for and applied to become part of that ecosystem. Right from the start, I was like, oh man, I want it so bad. And I knew the competition was stiff, and they had over 500 projects apply, and only 20 of them made it at the end, right? So being accepted as part of that ecosystem, I'm not going to list off all the companies involved, but the corporate, partners that we have as a part of plug and play, Coca-Cola to Carrefour to, every major sector, every major vertical. And that's what's happening right now. We actually last week, Carl was in California for the entire week at the Plug and Play Tech Center. They had a bunch of reverse pitches, these companies showing exactly what the problems they have and how technology from their perspective can help them. And there's so many corporate partners out there that I'd love to work with that. We actually have community members right now vetting all these, companies and finding all the right projects, and it's so exciting, and there's more to tackle than we can tackle, so we're tackling as much as we can, honestly.
Right. So Denny, what this means is you have Fortune 500, Fortune 200, who knows, you have huge companies literally paying attention to what we would have said at the start is little Morpheus Network. Now you're becoming a bit of a real deal, big deal.
Yeah, like you mentioned, those Fortune 500s, 100s, 200s. These are the companies that actually listened to the pitches of these over 500, technology companies, and made the decision to bring in, 20 companies to actually use the tech. So we're one of those 20 companies. We're super excited to be a part of it. If you look at, companies in the past like ours that have been accepted in this ecosystem, they've done amazing things. So
it's just amazing to me that more people in crypto, I don't understand why more people in crypto aren't talking about Morpheus Network. I have to say this because I am always engaged in that space. And I just find it remarkable we aren't talking more. And that's not to FOMO. I mean, I don't even own one token of Morpheus Network. And that's not because I don't believe you. I literally can't believe I don't, listening to this stuff. So that may change in the future for me. Not financial advice by any means. Now, I want to talk to you about your adoption strategies, Danny, because that's important. You talked about this plug and play ecosystem. Amazing that you made the top 20. How do we, move that forward globally so that you have this global launch and then you have mass adoption follow?
Yes, definitely. First of all, I will point out the top 20 makes it seem like we're somewhere in the top 20. The top 20 were all the winners. It was like a tie for the top 20. So it wasn't like there was a one and then so on and so forth. So
Right.
we're in the best position we could possibly be with Plug and Play, which is amazing. And now we talk about global adoption, where we don't think that one company with our team, it could be the best team in the world, and which we really feel it is. We can get this to be pushed out on a global level. We need other companies helping us do that. We're taking the view of other SaaS companies out there like Salesforce, for example, and having independent software vendors selling the product. So for example, I mentioned Blockchain Guru, one of our partners. They're basically vendors of Morpheus Network, looking to sell that to more companies out there. So our view is not to sell to everybody, it's to have teams of salesmen pushing it out to people all around the world, whether it's within the United States, Canada, so on and so forth.
Right.
So yes, when you talk about adoption, that's definitely our view, is having teams of companies selling it and not just our salespeople.
Sure. It sounds almost like a franchise concept in the sense of getting others to really spread the word that are in the business sector. Good strategy. Obviously, the right people to connect with. So I wish you all the best as you evolve globally for that mass adoption strategy. Now, I want to talk to you also about the Pioneer program. I've read into it slightly. Many wouldn't know about it. What is it, and how does it enhance Morpheus Network?
Now, listen, when it comes to ourselves, and we're super excited about the partners we have and the ecosystems we're a part of. But like you said, you got to call a spade a spade. We're a startup. We're a startup company. It's been just under a year since we've finished fundraising, for example. So the Pioneer program gets companies on early, gets companies using actually technologies that aren't available even during the launch period, stuff that hasn't been publicly released. To optimize what they're doing. So we want companies to come on as early as possible, obviously, whether what they're looking to do isn't necessarily ready yet, but we can develop it along with them. So we're giving these companies the early sort of view of extra technologies, and we want these pioneer companies. We need these pioneer companies for us, and obviously in the long run, it's going to be a huge benefit for them as well.
Got it. Okay. Now, you mentioned something really important. You mentioned you'd raise funds. Now, these pioneer companies, these primary companies on board with you, they're going to be key. But have you got the money, Danny, right now, with the money you've raised? Were you careful with the way that you spent money? Were you frugal through this bear?
You know what? I'll say it. We've been cheap. We were cheap from the beginning, and we actually just drive towards getting towards revenue. So anything extra, I've seen other projects that I have no idea what they're thinking from the start, but showing off.
Let's not even waste time on that crap. Let's talk about what you really need. Now, the question is though, do you have the money that you need to keep going?
The answer to that question is 100% yes. We developed a runway right from the start, and we still have that runway to get us towards sustainable revenue. So not even a concern for us. And, when it comes to, we mentioned Plug and Play and a bunch of the other ecosystems, a big thing about it is venture capitalists, right? And they're looking to put in funds, and it really puts us in an advantageous position to say, we don't need funds. We're not looking for funds. We're looking for partners, right? So
right.
We're not saying we turn down the proper partner who's looking to get involved in the business and looking, let's say, for equity to be involved, but it would have to make sense from us from a business standpoint, and being able to, in a sense, take advantage of their networks, push towards adoption, push towards revenue, and not for fundraising. So,
so real value add, not this BS superficial stuff that we often see.
Yeah, listen, if we needed funds, we needed to fundraise, I wouldn't necessarily call that BS, then we need the funds, but we don't need the funds. We do want the partners, obviously, to push adoption. So, whether I think that's going to be mainstream in a year or 2 years, a year would be unbelievable. Let's do it in 6 months.
Right. So. Okay. Now, Danny, I need to talk to you about something that is super important. Obviously, you're ticking all the boxes when it comes to building a business. Literally, that I think people would be impressed with what you've done. But for this to really work, the utility model has to work, because that's one thing that drives, it's the core, this utility token model. So MRPH, that's your utility token, that's the ticker. But how does this particular token correlate with your business so people can use it as a true utility, but genuinely and fairly expect that that token will indeed correlate with your growth?
Yes, definitely. Now, we talk about the digital footprints. We talk about building these, rich histories of every single shipment, every single product. The transfer of our token actually maps out and it gets it records all those different specifications of all those supply chains. So it's essential to have the token involved in every single transaction and every single shipment. The token is involved. The token is the backbone of of the entire network, of those digital footprints. We need that token involved. So it is an essential utility to have that token involved. Now, you mentioned, being correlating to the business as well. We have a couple different business models and revenue models, both related to the tokens as well, obviously. We have we mentioned our payment system, multi-flow payment system. If someone's just using our payment system, there's different ways of using the payment system. But, for example, we have a transactional fee, which is a 1% transactional fee. And depending on how they're spending the funds, that would come to us in MRPH as well. Now, that as well is being held by our token holders. It's the same MRPH that they purchased from the original token sale. It's being cycled through the entire system. So you can see we've when it comes to that 1% transactional fee, we've actually related the revenue of the company to how much token is needed from the holders themselves and where that token's coming from. So we're relating both the tokens to the revenue model and bringing them together.
Okay, I want to go deeper because I'm still a little confused. Now, utility itself, often we refer to that in terms of the real use of this. So I want to find out from you specifically, going beyond fiat, because could it be possible that you could just operate this entire system without it? That's what I really need to know, that it simply can't be done. So talk us through every single aspect, even if it takes time, why the utility token model is literally essential in every aspect.
Yeah, that's, once again, it is the backbone of the system, right? So we have that token transferred for every one of these transactions. So for example, if we're using, technologies that we mentioned, legacy technology and ERP systems and using a Swift-based wire transfer and so on and so forth, there's no crypto involved in that whatsoever. There's, the actual MRPH token is absolutely necessary to actually map out all these different, histories and transactions within the supply chain. So if someone, let's say, has a Swift-based wire, if they want to go back to, a system to see how was that recorded, what's the history of that, what's the immutable history of it, it goes based on that MRPH token that was transferred within that transaction itself on the back end of the entire system. So once again, it's not like we're making these businesses transfer the token alongside their supply chains to make sure that it's recorded. This is all on the back end of our platform with the utility. And then we actually have it's almost like a side chain. We mentioned that layering technology. It's a side chain or layering within Ethereum of our MRPH to be able to map all these individual aspects as well. So
right, got it. I only asked because obviously it was utilized also to raise capital. That's why we have to know that it goes beyond it. Now, what about with incentivization, staking? Those kind of words come up a lot with other systems. Have you also built in mechanisms beyond just that mapping capacity?
Now, I'll start. We should talk a little bit about this maybe from a hypothetical perspective, because I know we have our head legal department. The legal department is Grant Gullison, and I'm sure he's watching this video and he's making sure I'm not going to say anything that I shouldn't be saying when it comes to.
Sure, and I appreciate that, because obviously some have used the security, and I understand why you're reticent to even use that term. But let's just discuss, it frankly. What is the plan beyond just that mechanism, so that we can understand? Okay, how can you incentivize users, for example?
Exactly. Now, once again, our view, I'll say this from the start, is pushing towards revenue, sustainable revenue, and using the utility token within the platform. Now, at a certain point, let's say take a hypothetical situation that a project is running a certain amount of transactions, and it cannot keep on running those transactions without the network being slowed down and congested. So keep the network running, keep the network secure. I have this extensive video with our lawyer actually discussing, what would be needed to keep a hypothetical network that is running, let's say, 1 million transactions, and a master node system with dedicated tokens towards keeping the network secure, keeping these transactions flowing. Our developers have looked into this sort of system, not something that we are implementing right now by any means, because why would we implement something that isn't necessary right now? Right. But using a masternode system, and for someone to hold a masternode, they have to be rewarded for that as well. They're keeping the network running, they're keeping the network secure, and there's fees that we're collecting, and there would be some rewards trickling back towards those node holders as well. So you can actually envision the system. In my mind, it's quite a beautiful system where fees are flowing in, and then the node holders themselves are receiving back a reward. and those nodes themselves are keeping the network functioning itself. So every side of it is sort of working on each other to keep everything in motion. So
got it. Now I want to clarify for all those viewers as well, and you've made it clear actually, so I'll just try and support it. Now, right now, that is not something that's being implemented by Morpheus Network, and obviously you are at the very core of your utility token. I can't emphasize that enough. But what I am hearing, what I like, is that there is an open door to discussion, and in the conjunction with the legal framework, with the compliance, with your lawyers, there is a possibility in the future to really expand the prospects of this utility. I think that's very important that we know that that conversation is certainly on the table as you build and understand what you actually can do in the legal framework.
100%. Like you said that perfectly. It's got to be within the legal framework, and it has to make sense, from a legal perspective. And we want obviously the platform, the network, and all that to keep on working. So having something that's legally sound and pushes the security and the function of the network, that's what we're after, obviously.
Got it. Okay. So to recap, there's been so much said. All the way from our first discussions when you first evolved from white paper, all the way through now, you've hit that milestone of the launch. Now you're moving into major discussions. You're moving globally. You're literally going to different countries, speaking with and mixing with the hobnobs, with the top guys in enterprise sectors. Denny, it's been an absolute privilege talking to you today. Is there anything you'd like to add, to those of the community, to those that have supported you, to those that don't know about you, to really reinforce what you're doing right now as an update from Morpheus Network?
Yeah, there is something. I tell them that, look at our project, and, if you haven't heard of us, I'd say just look into us a little bit deeper and see what's going on. And you mentioned our community specifically. I wanted to thank our community. Our community is amazing. It's unbelievable. I mentioned before, like having these connections that I've made. And honestly, these are people that I don't see them as community members. I see them as partners within this whole, journey of mine. So I want to thank them for being so amazing and supportive and understanding what we're trying to do. And people from the outside, as I mentioned, look at what we're doing. Honestly, it's there's a lot of stuff going on in this space right now, which is driving towards, creating technologies which are not needed. And we're actually driving towards real world uses. And you'll see in our pilots and our projects and all the videos we put out and everything we're doing is driving towards being used by real businesses. So that's what I leave people with.
Well, Denny, thank you very much. You are the CEO of Morpheus Network. You have always been very articulate and always very loquacious when it comes to the passion you have to lead this out for something real. You're not about BS. You really want this to be something that can be applied in the real business domain, and you want it to actually be revolutionary, where we cut out certain elements of it to just get from A to B very efficiently. So I thank you very much for bringing this blockchain capacity to supply chain and beyond. You've got great backers, great advisors. Again, I'd like to also emphasize, I am not a token holder of this, and I certainly was not paid this interview, but I have always supported what I regard as good ideas, good tech, good people. And for me, without, with not providing financial advice, I support anything in the blockchain where you're trying to take it to that next level and expand beyond crypto. So I see that in you, Denny. I think you're trying to do this, and wish you all the very best as you continue. Hopefully, mate, we can catch up when you've disclosed more of these NDAs, as the pipeline starts to really be transparent. But thank you very much for your time today, mate.
Thank you, Brad. And we'll definitely be doing this again sometime. And maybe a couple months that we could reveal more names and show more things, and maybe even a live demo and all that in the future. So Brad, always, thank you so much for having me again.
You're very welcome, mate. And all the best to the team, and take care, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, mate.